Welcome back. We're here with Nuzayra from NH Legal. Nuzayra, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on your show. How are you?
Doing good. It's very exciting for you to finally come on and chat. We've known each other for years, so I'm excited to have you on to, share your knowledge and all your experience you've been through. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm equally excited. I've known you for, a while now. I think we go back some time from the days of the crypto and NFT
Yes.
space. So it's really exciting to be here with you. So yeah, let's get started.
Yes. So you went out on your own to start NH Legal which is your own law firm in 2020. What really inspired you to start your own law firm?
So Um, it's kind of a mix, I would say. I was working as an associate attorney for the longest time. So I mean, for the longest time in the sense that's just what attorneys do, right? You get out of law school and then you join a firm as an associate attorney and then you work up the ranks, you become a partner. That's basically what my mind were that's where my mind was at as well. That's what I would eventually end up doing. But what ended up happening was my last law firm job. So this was the last job I had before I started my own firm. It was really, really toxic. And the pressure of billable hours and all of that. And I know many attorneys can relate to this. It's just a lot. Like it's insane. You are spending your nights in your office, so like 10 p.m., 11 p.m. sometimes we're in the office, and then next day you go to court and you have to be in court by like 8 a.m. And so it was really taxing, I think, physically and mentally as well. The work by itself was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed what I was doing, but it was the way the law firm was managed and handled. It was just not good. Like, so I was getting really, really unwell and sick because of the level of stress. Like, I was getting all kinds of health conditions, which was stress induced. And at the same time, the environment had become really toxic. So it was kind of becoming like a revolving door. So many of my attorney friends, I'm still in contact with, and we're still great friends. And I met them there. They were just constantly coming and going, leaving because the environment was such. There were also instances of sexual harassment. Like it was basically just unsustainable to continue like that. And so when I left that job, I was actually confused about where I was going to go from there because I didn't know if I wanted to practice law anymore. Like that's how much it had impacted me. I just thought that I don't think I want to continue doing this anymore. Like I cannot go on like this. And there was a fear that, okay, if I go back and I work for another law firm, even though, you know, there's many law firms that are really great workplaces, I was just nervous that, oh my God, I think I can walk into another toxic situation again and I'm just going to be stuck. And at the same time, this was in 2018, I got married and my husband was living abroad at the time. So I wanted the flexibility to be able to travel and do all of that. So it all kind of came together where in 2018, I got married, I left my law firm job, and I took a break. Like I was on a break because I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And so from 2018 I took a break. Then 2019 I acted as an independent contractor for another law firm. So I was freelancing, and that is what gave me the idea and kind of like the foundation for starting my own law firm. Because when you're freelancing, it is in a way, even though you're not like actively focused on client development, business development, because this is someone else's responsibility. You still understand a lot about business because you are not being paid as a W 2 employee. So it's not a fixed salary. It depends on, the amount of work that you're doing. So that really gave me a good headway. And when I was working like that, I was traveling. So that, these things kind of came together and formed the basis of how I wanted my law firm to be. I liked the fact that I had flexibility to travel. So I knew I wanted to have a virtual law firm. But back then, the concept of virtual law firm wasn't as mainstream as it is now because we didn't hit the pandemic yet. And it just so happened that we roll over into 2020 and I decide, okay, I am going to be a lawyer. I have made up my mind. I'm not going to leave the practice of law. I love I love my job too much and I enjoy doing it, but I want to do it on my own terms and set up a business which is flexible, sustainable, and does not have all of that toxic work culture that I had come from. And so that's what drove me to start my own law firm. And I set that up in 2020. And I set it up as a virtual practice because of all of the reasons I just
Yeah.
discussed. But I didn't know that we were about to enter like this was like a once in a lifetime thing that I think that we all went through, like when the whole world just went on a lockdown and brick and mortar businesses were turning into virtual businesses. So many people lost their businesses because they
Yeah.
just couldn't make that transition. And I started my law firm virtually, not knowing like this is going to become the norm. So I guess it just worked out in a way, it worked out really well because I thought in my head, oh, whatever I'm going through is just the struggle of being, first year in business. You're still trying to set things up. But yeah, that's how I started my own law firm.
And it's really cool because I feel like the stereotypical, perspective from the outside is that law firms are very toxic, are very demanding. So it's really cool that you kind of were able to experience that, take that experience and say, how can we build a law firm that's not like that? That's not toxic. That's not the stereotypical, firm that you're going to join, and build something that cultivates happy humans. So I think like that's really, really cool. And you were one of the first attorneys to successfully obtain a federal trademark in the cannabis industry.
Yes.
What advantage did this give you moving forward as a lawyer?
Oh, massive. When I this was at my last law firm, I was basically hired to build up and head their IP department because cannabis and intellectual property don't really go hand. I mean, they go hand in hand now, but back then it didn't because it was completely federally prohibited, and most of intellectual property law is federal. There is state intellectual property law as well, so, that was more doable because in California back then, it was medicinal. Medicinal was legal, recreational was not legal. So even if you're going for a state trademark, there were so many different types of requirements that you would have to look at. But for my clients, like the kind of clients we had, they were not interested in just staying in California. They wanted to expand into different states where it was legal. So now we're talking about a federal trademark. Um, and that was my mission, that I had to figure out how to obtain federal trademarks. So I kind of became like a law school student again. You go back to your student days where you're reading so much statute. You're because the main statute was it and still is the Controlled Substances Act. That is what classifies marijuana as a Schedule II drug at the federal level, and that's why you cannot get federal protection for it, et cetera, et cetera. So my day became like a law student again. I just went through the act, I went through the USPTO's rejections. And, as attorneys, we always try to find workarounds. If you can't go somewhere directly, okay, we can still get to the goal, but we might have to take a different route. And so I was trying to figure out how to make that happen. We wanted federal trademarks, not for lateral products that a couple of other law firms were doing. Like, for example, you have a a cannabis brand, but then you're getting a trademark for clothing. Like that is one strategy some law firms employed, but I didn't find any sense in that because there's no point of that trademark. You can't enforce it against other cannabis brands because it's a clothing trademark. So I figured out how to work around it. I worked with USPTO examining attorneys. So every application that I was submitting, we would inform the client like this is we're kind of like doing testing now because there's no precedent, there's no case law for how to handle cannabis trademark applications. There's none of that. So we are creating law as we go along right now. So that was an incredible experience because I've never worked with the USPTO to get things done. Like it's like even now for non-cannabis brands, you're not necessarily like brainstorming with the examining attorney. You are responding to the objections that they provide. But at that stage, even the USPTO wanted to figure out what was happening. And so now we have those If anyone is, I know this is like a completely nerdy subject to be interested in, but if anyone is interested in federal cannabis trademarks, you'll see that when you go to any cannabis trademark application, there are these requirements that your product has to have, 0.3 percentage of THC. It cannot be more than that. Things like that, the source, all of that. So these are things that we worked on with the USPTO, and they also worked with the FDA to get these minimum thresholds reserved. So you could get cannabis trademarks, but then you would have to meet these minimum requirements. So we were literally creating law when we were working on all of that. So it was just a very interesting time. And when the first few cannabis federal trademarks were registered, it was big news because it was big news in the legal industry that, okay, this is possible, this is happening. So it definitely opened up a lot of doors for me, in the sense like I was invited to speak at a lot of events, and there were publications on cannabis trademarks. So from a professional side, that was great, but I think also from a mental side, it helped me a lot going forward, even when I was working on my own business, because it gives you the confidence when you figure something out that is so impossible to figure out, that okay, if I could figure this out, I can also figure out other difficult challenges. And so I love that phase, even though it was at that law firm where it was so toxic. This particular, I think, aspect of my job there was truly rewarding. Like, I really liked the whole process. That was so challenging, and when we accomplished what we set out to do, the sheer joy you would see on our clients' faces. I mean, these are, and also it's the type of clients, like cannabis clients. I don't know what this situation is right now because I still work with my old clients. I haven't taken on new cannabis brands, but when I was working there, you could see the types of people that are in the cannabis industry, and these are all like big tough men. Like, most of the time that was just the type of client we got. I think we had like two women maybe who were entrepreneurs in that space, but it was mainly like these big tough men that had a certain background, and to see them like be giddy with joy, it was just something else. Like, you could really see like that joy and that like childlike enthusiasm just come out. So that was really, really cool.
Yeah, and it's awesome to see you kind of being open to take on new things, because you like think of a lawyer and you think of a very strict thinking process. So it's like really awesome to see you wanting to expand and wanting to take on those new things. And then on top of that, that opening up you to speaking opportunities and doing other things again that you don't think the go-to lawyer would be
Yeah.
like, like open to doing, like making content, speaking at events and doing those type of things. And for someone that's building a brand, at what point in the brand building process should someone start to think about getting a trademark?
Oh, I love this question. Okay, so there's also a lawyer answer to this. So it depends. It really does depend on the creative vision, where you're at with it, how serious you are about it. So what I like to say is the best time to think about your trademark or your brand name is the best time is pretty much at the beginning, because it is the foundation of your brand that you're building. If you are trying to say create an Instagram page, a website for your brand, like those are the first few things that you do in order to get your product in front of your ideal audience, right? And that is all trademark related. So the very fact that you can own that brand name and have that same brand name across all platforms, so your website, your social media, it's creating brand consistency. That's the very start of your business. So if possible, um, that is the best time, is when you think of a brand name, like you have a name in mind and like, I'm going to call my brand name this, and you are serious about that business. So if you're dabbling in it, like, and this is something that I think needs to be stressed, as well, also about like figuring out where your priorities are, um, because no one has unlimited amount of money, right? Like, so we have to be responsible about where we are allocating resources. So if you are not sure that you're going to be in this business, and this is more like something like, okay, I'm going to test out and see if this sticks or if this works, and then I'm going into it. And for you, you're testing more in the sense of you're like testing with, say, your friends or your coworkers or even maybe customers that you obtain, but it's not through brand promotion, things like that. If you're just testing it like that, that's a good time to figure out a brand name and see if this is something you're going to stick with. Once that stage is done and you have a brand name and you know that this is the business I'm going to stick with, doesn't mean that you have to start making revenue straight off the bat, but it mentally you know that this is when this is the business that I'm going to be invested in and I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to build this. That's the time that you do want to think about a trademark because you don't want to build your entire brand on shaky grounds. If you don't have ownership over that name, and worse than that, if you don't know if someone else has ownership over that name and you start using it and you start promoting it, and then all of a sudden you find out you can't use that name, that is really expensive to change because now you're redoing your website. You know, you are probably sometimes you don't even have permission to use your social media handles anymore, which can be a big blow for some people because you might have to completely change your whole brand identity. And depending on the type of business you have, I know like for e-commerce businesses, product based businesses, it's very, very expensive because think about all of the packaging and inventory, all of that has a specific brand name. And then when you get hit with a cease and desist notice or an impending lawsuit because this brand name belongs to someone else, you can't use any of that. All of that product just goes to waste. Or if you've already paid a marketing or branding agency to create an entire campaign for you on a name that you can't use anymore, like massive losses in terms of finance. Like that is one thing. The other thing is it sets you back just in terms of growth as well. Now you have to go back to the drawing board and think of something. So it's not like you can't get a trademark later when your business is successful, but the best time to get it is at the very start. It's one of the first things you want to check off that, okay, do I have ownership over this name? If I do I like it enough? If the answer is yes, I like it enough, just submit your application and then focus on other parts of the business. And it also helps for you to know upfront whether or not this name is available because you can plan your entire marketing strategy or business strategy based on that as well. And if you have to reach out to another brand to request a coexistence agreement, you want to do all of that upfront instead of, being 5, 10 years in business and then figuring out that you need to do that. So I would say at the very start, if possible. Otherwise, as soon as you can, as soon as your business is up and running, that's the time to do it.
And I've seen some horror stories on your Instagram page of people not doing that. So I think that's definitely important to look
Yeah.
at um,
Yeah.
for the future of the business. And as a law firm, why is going paperless so important for you guys?
Okay, this is a great question. So it was very important for me that we go paperless as a business, and sometimes this is difficult for some clients to understand, like why we are completely
Yeah.
paperless, and it's because I think like there's two causes that are very near and dear to my heart, and one of them is environmental impact or climate change. Um, we have seen I mean, I feel like we are in a time where we are seeing the effects of climate change in real time. Like every year in the United States, the hurricanes are getting worse, the flooding is getting worse, the summers are getting hotter. Like it's happening in front of our own eyes and we see so many people suffering right now. And it happens because we just don't realize small things that we do has an impact on the environment. Paper is one of them, and traditional law firms, paper waste is really really high. Sometimes you can't help it. If you are a litigation firm, you have to print out paper and then you have to file that paper with the courts. You have to submit it, you have to send it to your opposing counsel. Paper is a very important part of having a litigation practice. um, and sometimes you make mistakes, there's typos, so you've got to reprint everything. But that is massive waste. But at the same time, it is required with that type of practice. I practice litigation. In my law firm, we do litigation, but we do mostly TTAB litigation, which is Trademark Trials and Appeals Board, and we do some federal trademark litigation as well. But majority of our litigation is Trademark Trials and Appeals Board, and the entire TTAB system is also paperless. It is not a conventional litigation system where you are sending in paper pleadings. You are submitting everything online. So I wanted to incorporate that into my practice as well, because you don't read we the way I've set up my operations, or the way we run our practice, we don't need a lot of paper. Like, if someone needs to print something out, like, that's something we talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, you need to print this out, so why? Let's look at why does these need to get printed out. And it's like, okay, we have to send a cease and desist letter or a letter to opposing counsel, it needs to be printed out. That's when we go and do it. Otherwise, if it can be handled, you know over email, over electronic fax, whatever it is. I know fax, you got to print that out too, but we try our best to minimize that, because I want to be very conscious about the carbon footprint that my business leaves on this planet. And it's not going to be a massive footprint anyway, but I feel like,
Yeah.
any small help to the environment, it adds up and it counts. So that's one of the reasons. And the other reason is it's also cost. Paper is expensive. It's like a legitimate cost of a law firm to maintain. You've got to get good quality papers. You can't even get like below average quality paper. You've got to get good quality paper, a good printer. You always have to, stock up on toners and ink. Like, this is all like things that add up. And so that's one of the reasons why I also was leaning more towards a paperless business, because it's just, from a business perspective, it can help you reduce cost as well, and it helps you with space as well. If you're trying to run a virtual business, having so much physical assets is not,
Yeah.
it's not helpful at all. So that's why I shifted to virtual and
Yeah.
paper.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I actually found uh, this information on your Facebook. I went back, I think,
Yeah.
5 or 6 years.
Oh,
Um, some information I found, and that NH Legal was the official attorney record for the Human Centipede trilogy for the
yes.
trademark in the US, which I found very interesting. I was like, well, that's an interesting one. What was it like working with such a well known movie brand?
Oh, it was so fun. And they are the sweetest people. Like, they make such, like, such disturbing movies, but they are the sweetest people. So they are from Europe, and they were one of my first clients. They were my yes, one of my first direct clients, and they came through a referral through another attorney. And when I was very excited for my first meeting with this client, and when we met, I was like, wow, she is so sweet. Like, she's like a very nice and a sweet person, and really great clients, like very good with communication. Whatever you need, they're going to get it to you in no time. And the the strategy part was actually really interesting, because the images and the products and everything else that we were working on was related to the human centipede. I
Yeah.
mean, it was the human centipede. And I'm someone who doesn't watch a lot of like gory movies like that. Like, I think except Game of Thrones, I haven't really watched, or I don't watch a lot of gory movies, but for this trademark, I did. I watched like a lot of clips of the movies, and it was interesting, because they also explained to you how, I mean, this was not part of our trademark, but it was just discussions. Like, the client was explaining how they get the actors ready and all of the stuff ready for shooting such disturbing scenes. It was really interesting. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that we don't get to see, because there's a huge um, psychological impact of shooting these things. So they're mindful of that with the actors. They're mindful of their modesty concerns, how you shoot them, and so you're not exposing any areas that the actor is not comfortable with. So those are the things that I got to learn, and just being associated with such an iconic brand. Like people know the human centipede, but every time I say human centipede, everyone's like, oh my God, you worked on that. I'm like, yeah, but it was really fun. Since then, the movies or the entertainment clients we've had, none of them have been from the horror genre. So this is very special to me, the human centipede.
That's awesome. Yeah, when I saw that, I was telling my mom, and I'm like, that is so interesting. You would never think, of that. You know, it just is fun to always find like those nuggets. I'm like,
Yeah.
that that's a good one. And moving to the personal side of things, what is one thing that never fails to make you feel something?
Um, from the personal side of things, I think there's a couple of things. I always get very moved with animal suffering. I don't like it at all. Like I don't like people hunting for sport. I think like, back in the days when we were living in caves, like our ancestors were living in caves, hunting was required. Like even I wouldn't say all the way back then, but a few hundred years ago or 100 years ago, hunting was required. And even now in some parts of the world, that's how people um, get their food, and that is completely understandable, and that's how it needs to be done. That's just the circle of life. But when I see people just it's a personal thing, and like I don't like it when I see like people are just like hunting for fun and like displaying their animal heads and all of that in their living rooms, or you have like like this happens a lot, like you've got like a massive bear fur on the floor, and it's just because they wanted to hunt that animal because the animal looked so majestic. And that makes me so sad. I'm like, yes, the animal looks majestic, like let it be, let it live. Like you don't have to bring it as a trophy in your home. So that's something that always moves me a lot. And also, I think on a personal level as well, I am very moved by like wars and unnecessary like genocide that happens. I don't like it, and I mean everyone, no one likes it, but I think for me it affects me to a level where I could make business decisions based on that. Like I would not associate with someone who is actively encouraging or is in taking part in one of those things that I just don't like. And these are things that actually move me. So if I see someone is really promoting animal cruelty or something like that, like that's not a person I would want to do business with. And the same with human suffering. If I know like someone is actively involved or does not realize, not does not realize, that's a different thing. If someone doesn't realize something, you can't really blame them for it. But someone who's actively involved in it, I wouldn't do business there. Like even if that means, and it has happened. Like I can give you an example where very recently I was um, I was approached by a client who wanted to complete an acquisition deal, and the acquisition deal was going to take place in the Middle East, where so much is happening now, and I just did not want to do that acquisition deal for this particular country because I don't want to take part in it directly. There's plenty of other attorneys that can help them with. I just didn't want to take part in it. And so even though it was really good money, like it was, because mergers and acquisitions, if attorneys know, like they pay really well.
Yeah.
So it was really good money, and I just decided I'm not going to take it, even though that means like from a business side that is taking a hit in a way, like you're turning away such a big client. But I just feel long term it's going to be it's going to be for the benefit of my team, my folks, whoever are with me, and my other clients who might not even like that I'm working with someone like that. So those are the things that affects me at a personal level, and it affects me to the point where it affects my business as well.
Yeah, and it's always awesome to see people that have values, right? Even if you might not agree with the values they stand for, it's always awesome to see people stand for something and
Yeah,
not be, not get walked over or not just take everything. They stand for something, even if that means turning down money, even if that means turning down a big collaboration or something like that. So I
yeah,
really like that you have values and that you are confident enough to vocalize them and talk about them and be like, hey, I stand for this. I'm not going to take on business for this, and this is why. And I have two more questions for you. If you could have dinner with two people,
yeah.
one person from the past and one person from the present, who would it be and why?
Okay, so person from the past would be, oh my God, there's so many, but okay, if I had to pick one, I think I would pick Princess Diana. Um, she was someone that when I was a kid, and I grew up in Bangladesh as a kid, and so we would see lot of television coverage on Princess Diana. Like that was a thing. I think it's because maybe it's something to do with Commonwealth countries. I'm not sure, but like the royal family of England was very much front and center whenever there was like a cultural discussion what's happening around the world. The royal family of England was pretty much there. So Princess Diana is someone like, as a kid I remember, I saw her on TV. Like I remember when she died, when she was killed, what the impact was globally. Like even as a kid, I think I was in like first grade or something, or second grade, and I remember like we had a moment in our classroom when we went to school that the next day. Like there was a moment where we all stayed quiet, we paid our respect to Princess Diana, like, and people cried. Like the kids in my class cried, our teacher was crying. Like it was, the impact was that much. And she always came across as someone, obviously comes from a privileged background. She's a princess. Like, what is the problem there? But I feel like what she went through emotionally, so many people can relate to it. And she was suffering from depression. She was going through a lot, but she turned that around in a way and used it to highlight important causes throughout the world. Like when she did, I don't remember which country it is specifically. Oh my God, why can't I remember? But I can't remember the name of the country specifically. But there's a famous, I think it's still on YouTube maybe, there's a famous video of her walking through a field that had landmines. And this was done on international TV to raise awareness about these landmines that have been left in war torn countries. They haven't been like disassembled or anything. So the danger of normal villagers just walking through fields and then stepping on landmines was incredibly high. But it was not something that was top of mind for anyone. But she did that, and then suddenly it was overnight, it became the center of focus, and those landmines were taken out.
Wow,
So she saved so
that's
many
awesome.
lives just doing that. And then she also was one of the first public figures that again broke the stigma of HIV AIDS. Because people back in the 90s, when we were kids, um, HIV AIDS, even though it's not really a contagious disease, like you can't hug someone and get HIV, but that was the perception. Like, oh my God, if someone has HIV, you don't associate with them. Like this person, anyway, is going through the worst thing that can happen to you and is now being ostracized from society. Like no one wants to be with this person. And she went and she hugged and shook hands with HIV patients, which again was such a big game changer in how these patients were treated, uh, and how these patients were interacted with by like the normal public. And to me that is incredible, that you have so much pain going on in your personal life clearly, and her pain was out there for the whole world to see because her marriage was falling apart in front of everyone. She was having mental breakdowns in public. Like it was all happening there, but at the same time she left such an impact. So I would love to have dinner with her. And I think the second person from now would be Jon Stewart.
Okay.
I love Jon Stewart. I think like he is such an incredibly intelligent person, the way he covers current affairs, the way he talks about them, it is incredible. So he would be someone, and plus he's so funny. Like a nice dinner with Jon Stewart would be just such a pleasant experience as well. So I think these two people.
Nice, nice. I like the Princess Diana one. That one's interesting. I think there's a lot of, especially conspiratorial type things you could
Yes.
talk to her about, that was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Uh, those are two good ones. And I have one more question for you.
Okay.
Why did you decide to partner with us and offer the discounts?
I decided to partner with you because I know you. Like, I know who you are. I know your work ethic and values. And I know that if you're creating something, you are putting your heart and soul in it, and it is going to be good. If it's not good, you're not going to be offering it. So, that's the reason. And I feel that, the discount is good. It incentivizes people to take action. And sometimes, we see things that are good for us, but we think in our head like, oh, that's too expensive, I'm not going to get it, even though we know it's something we need and it's good for us. um, Versus if you make something, a little bit more fun, where you get the feeling that, okay, I'm getting a good product, and it's a good deal, I'm not paying full price. It's always a nice way to incentivize people to just do that, like invest in something that's good for you, and at the same time you are saving money, right, by getting it at a discounted rate, which you wouldn't get if you were buying from somewhere
Yeah,
else. So, those were the two reasons. I think primarily it's you, and also I just want to spread the love. Take take
yeah,
these contracts and, like, use it for your own business. That also makes me happy. I think, like, as an entrepreneur myself, and an attorney that works with entrepreneurs, it gives me a lot of joy and satisfaction when I see that my work is helping someone
yeah.
build their business, or it's actually helping them in their life. I really like that. So that's why.
Thank you so much for the kind words. I appreciate it. And Nuzayra, that's all the questions I have. How can people find you? And what is one thing you want to leave people with?
Okay. So people can find me on Instagram. It's my first name, Nuzayra ESQ. That's my business account. Same on LinkedIn. You can connect with me there, Nuzayra Haque. That's my LinkedIn. And our website is nhlegal.net. So these are the different platforms. Or you can also email our office at support@nhlegal.net. Like, there's many ways to find me, and I would love to connect with anyone who finds me through this podcast channel. That would be really cool. And what do I want to leave people with? I think I think that what I would want to see in society is a little bit more kindness and compassion for people that don't necessarily look like you, that don't come from the same background as you, and to give them that space. Because if someone is from a different background, from a different country, um, they have different cultural values. Doesn't mean those values are bad. It's just it's different from yours. And I think because we live in a multicultural society in the US, especially where I'm from, Los Angeles is, it's like a melting pot, which makes it really great. But also, when you have so many different types of people living together, friction is really easy. And so, what I would want to leave you with is someone, I've lived in the UK, I've lived in the US, I was born and I spent my childhood in Bangladesh. So, I've seen different continents and different people. And what I realize is that, at the end of the day, we are all looking for the same thing. We all want the same things. Everyone wants to live in peace, have a roof over their head, have good, nutritious food to eat, and be surrounded with friends and family. No matter where you come from, those are some of the basic things you want. And to just give, someone that understanding and kindness. If you don't necessarily understand their ways, just try to learn about it instead of, building up prejudice in your mind.
Kindness is the way. And I think, especially now in society, we need a lot of it, with all the stuff going on. And I think just being a little bit more kind and empathetic is important. So, Nuzayra, thank you so much for coming on. It was a great conversation. And again, it's always awesome to reconnect with you. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show. This was so fun.
Of course.